That's it. Go comatose for me, baby.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
Hold it. This is getting confusing. You didn't always hate each other? There had to be some nice moments during the courtship, maybe?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. Now, we've been having some issues lately. We've been having some changes just as far as what is allowed and what isn't allowed via social media. And, kind of, I wouldn't say censorship, but it feels like free speech is becoming less and less apparent in the technological age. And here to talk with me about that is my good friend Gevian Daragan from Animated Concepts, former assistant editor at Milestone Comics. And the man, we like to have these complicated conversations. How you doing, Gevian?
I'm doing well. Wes doing well. How's everything with you?
We're doing all right here. We've got some issues here. I'm sure everyone noticed you could no longer downvote YouTube videos, and apparently you could no longer post pictures or videos on Twitter if you don't have the approval of anyone that's appears in the picture, as it feels like we are taking free speech away from American life, at least if you're on social media, one little brick at a time.
Yeah, this is the age of the crackdown. It's like people want to control. It is becoming apparently clear. People want to control the way you think, what you quote unquote consume, or what information you receive, and all this seems to be about just controlling people and outcomes. And it's getting to be real unfortunate when you look at the whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing, how that went on for easily over a year. When you look at the Katie Couric interview with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when you look at now Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff of President Trump, coming out and revealing that he had COVID before that debate and afterwards, and how they covered that up. It's like people are not the powers that be, if you will, the establishment, from corporate to the government. They are not interested in allowing a free flow of information and people to be able to disseminate and discern that information as they see fit. Nanny states in full effect.
The First Amendment's kind of like the bedrock of the republic here in the United States. It's what everything is based on. You are allowed to have an opinion that goes against the government. You're allowed to have an opinion your neighbor doesn't agree with. You are allowed to express yourself, to a certain degree, and it's protected by the Constitution. And, obviously the First Amendment was put in there to protect citizens from the government, to ensure the government couldn't silence the citizens as far as criticism. We see that all over the world. It's happening every day. I don't think they imagined, and I don't think I even imagined, that it would be technological giants as far as corporations that would really be the entities that would go after freedom of speech and the First Amendment so hard.
Yeah, and that's the thing where people often get confused about, where they go, is Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is, are they violating my First Amendment rights? And it's like, yeah, people understand it doesn't apply to them. It doesn't apply to private entities. It applies to the government. It's just of course,
a little bit different because they're public. They're almost public utilities.
I get you. I get you. Yeah, but until they are public utilities, they're private organizations. You're right. They're totally. It's got to the point now they have become so, if I'm using the word right, ubiquitous. They've become so essential to the information infrastructure that we have, not just nationally but globally, that you would think that the laws would change, where they would get classified and identified as basically, like you said, a public utility. But until that happens, they're totally within their rights to shut anybody down whenever they want to. Even when it came to, what was it, with Parler, if I remember correctly, they basically started either delisted them or taking them off of the
they removed them from
out of the stores, the app stores. Yeah, they removed them from the.
Then they removed their access to use money.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's and like you said, the founders couldn't have foreseen it because of course, in their context, and I'm not trying to be a junior historian here, but it's like at that time the biggest threat of basically power, control, and influence was a government. It wasn't necessarily the press, if you will, or say a corporation. Or if it was a corporation, they just turned a blind eye to it at the time. But it's become clear now that corporations have become multinational because they control such power influence, because they've become so intertwined with governmental interests, when you talk about the military-industrial complex, it has now become clear that the government and corporations have literally become one and the same. There's with the exception of the power to tax or declare war, what difference is there really between a government and a corporation when it comes to some of this stuff?
It's crazy. So obviously, Jack Dorsey stepped down as the Twitter CEO, and he had stepped down before and he came back. Wasn't the most popular guy in the world, but it turns out maybe he wasn't the biggest problem there. The new CEO, his name is Parag Agrawal. Wasn't born in the U.S. I believe he was born in India. And this is what he had to say in 2018. This stuff's scary when you think about his perspective on what Twitter represents. And this is what he said in 2018. That Twitter should focus less on thinking about free speech, but thinking about how the times have changed, where our role being Twitter is particularly emphasized is who can be heard. And so increasingly our role is moving towards how we recommend content and how we direct people's attention. Not trampling maybe so much on freedom of speech, but who could actually be heard? Who's if you say something they don't like, you could say it, just no one will ever hear you say it.
It's like they're setting themselves up as the ultimate gatekeeper. So we all know the comic book series and all that, but it's like that old Latin phrase, which I don't know the Latin of it, but I know what it roughly translates into English is who watches the watchman. And these guys are saying we watch the watch. we're not nobody. We're the watchmen, and basically nobody watches us. We're going to be watching you, and with no oversight and no guidance whatsoever. Not even a principled approach to it, because and I know some people who are who feel like I would be betraying left by this, but it's just the clearest example right now when you look at what happened with the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. And you look at how they controlled and manipulated information with that. When you look at when it was clear that either people didn't do their homework or pretended not to do their homework or knew what the issues were involved, and then allow people to, they tease out information, allow people to run with it, the general public to run with it, and never to correct it or to correct it in any kind of a way, much less regularly. It's like, that's the danger of that, because when you sit up there and say, I'm the one who's going to control what you see and who you hear from, then you're getting only that person's point of view. You're only getting that person's perspective. And in a lot of cases, and some people point with this, you're only getting their agenda. And that's what the problem with this is. So with that guys, it's like vaya con Dios with that, and everybody who's going forward. But don't be surprised what Twitter's going to look and sound like a year from now. This happened with it, and I only talk about the left stuff of this for everybody out there who it's like, well, they're doing it right. Okay, in the comment section, give your examples. I'm just talking from my personal experience with the Young Turks. That's what happened with them. It's like when they started getting money, if I think it was from Jeffrey Katzenberg, and that money started ruling the day, it was like you could. It was like it wasn't even like slow motion, but you could you could tell how all the perspectives changed, all the independent voices went out of it, all the programming changed, because that's what it is, man. You can lie to yourself about this stuff all you want. Having a guy like that in charge, I don't know him personally, I don't know all his history, but people want to say, well, you took that tweet out of that tweet or whatever it is out of context. Just reading it for what it is, it's like, yeah, that's not a good sign of what's to come.
Well, his first decision as CEO of Twitter was to make it so you can't post pictures or videos without, express consent of anyone that's in the picture or videos. And that's insane. You brought up the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. Yep. A lot of people knew that they were being lied to because those videos were available on Twitter and other social medias. And interesting enough, Gervais, something that I know you were out there, you were marching about was the George Floyd case. If those videos weren't out there to show the world what had happened, what do you think happens, to those police officers, in Minneapolis? Whether you agree with the decision or not, they probably never even have a day in court. It's probably just covered up. But the video was out there without the consent of everyone involved in there to let people know what happened. And if Parag, obviously he's the CEO, is going to have his way, that video technically wouldn't be allowed to be shown.
Oh no, yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, that's the same case that happened with here in Chicago, where basically I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I want to look it up real quick because I don't want to get it wrong because it's that important. Where you had an officer, I believe his name was no. Well, Juicy Smollett is one thing. Yeah, I'm willing to go there.
I saw the video of him going to the subway.
Oh yeah, no. It's It's like, so I'll give two. Yeah, and we can start with Juicy Smollett first. Yeah, right. Juicy Smollett. No, but it's like, yeah, now that his trial is coming up, and when you look at the way he manipulated and played the system, and basically tried to play all of us into this place of division, because either he was, I think the motive was, at least the alleged motive was, he was trying to get a better deal with his empire deal, whatever it is. But the damage that he did in terms of, as even though Eddie Robinson had his own issues, he was right about this, is that by doing something like that, now you make it harder for people who actually have suffered from a hate crime, who are actually looking to get justice behind a hate crime, to do that, because the links that he went to lie about that, the links that he went to manipulate government agencies and the media, the actions of other people like, Cook County District Attorney, whatever they call it, the title is, Kim Foxx, the way she handled that whole situation, how everybody's doing 1,000% CYA in the aftermath of it. The fact that it's taken 3 years, I believe, is 3 years to even get to this point of him even being held accountable for it. It's just like this thing was going on with media right now. We are in dangerous territory. And it was another case, like you talk about what would happen to cops if you didn't have stuff like video or photos to show stuff. John Burge, who basically, for all intents and purposes, if I remember correctly, for almost 2 decades, basically ran black sites of torturing primarily black men in terms of getting interrogations out of them and things like that. And he got away pretty much scot-free with that. So you're right. The importance of having video, photos, being able to file FOIA, Freedom of Information Acts to get information, so people can have the actual facts and judge for themselves what's to be true and what's not to be true. The biggest, when you talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, the thing is, yes, those videos were available, but what the media relies upon, people who are trying to manipulate storylines and narratives is what they're relying on is that people, by and large, are not going to go and do their own homework. So now it's just becoming imperative for a lot of us, even those who say, I got better things to do, or I'm just a working mom or working dad doing this and that. Nah, bro, if you're going to engage in this arena now of talking about these things from a cultural level, you're going to have to do a lot more homework, because the people who put themselves out there, like Twitter, to be the arbiters of truth, fact, and objectivity, they're not. They have proven without a shadow of a doubt they cannot be trusted.
Well, one of the reasons that they have protections by the U.S. government on a lot of this stuff is because they're not a publisher or stuff like that. They don't decide what goes out there, but nonsense. Now they're kind of decided that they are going to be. And there's so many weird disclaimers on tweets and stuff now. I think there's like the suicide hotline. There was like, this is misinformation. It was like, what the hell is going on here? Why am I not supposed to see this number?
Oh yeah, no, it's like what they're doing, and so dog, you know what you're talking about. No, what they're doing is they're relying on the fact that the law is 20 years behind. That's easily the law is 20 years behind. These guys have been acting like publishers for at least, if not from the very beginning, privately, at least the last 10 to 15 years publicly. Certainly, they've totally been acting like publishers. Exactly, they
pay them if anyone, like even if your friends are going to see your Facebook posts, you actually have to kind of like pay them and stuff. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, they're totally publishers, and the fact that they're going, well, we're not based on the law. It's like, yeah, but the way you practice, but your business practices, your commercial practices, basically, you're all in but name. They are publishers, so they're just. Again, this goes to this whole thing of, I don't lose my train of thought here, but it goes to this whole thing of is that what we're dealing with is a group of entities who basically have set themselves up as the arbiters of all things that are supposed to be considered truth, and they have literally no oversight over them, none, and they know it, and they're using the law to their advantage to do so, or the lack thereof.
Strange, with on YouTube, obviously, the downvote was an ability for people to make a statement very easily. You go hit the button, you say, I did not like this content, or I have some type of issue with whatever this video is. And it, you could see the videos that were getting extreme amounts of downvotes. And there's clearly, I don't know if it's a political agenda, but there is an agenda behind removing it. And it's not in the best interest of YouTube subscribers and users. It's in the best interest of the people, the content, creators or whatever it is, the people that they want to protect for, like, to save them from embarrassment.
Yeah, and I think at this point, even if you don't know if the agenda is political, personal, but I think everyone now has every right to speculate there's an agenda. Okay, and it's not like purely, and it doesn't have to be purely like, well, it's just business minded. Even though people will come around and say that. Well, even if the political agenda is tied to making more money, the simple fact of the matter is there are agendas, and these guys, whether they like it or not, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, in some case, they have basically become very ubiquitous digital versions of the fourth estate. And they become these arms of the fourth estate without accepting any of the philosophical or ethical responsibilities of doing so. And like you said, they are acting as publishers. And because they're acting as publishers, the law needs to catch up and start treating them as publishers. Plain and simple. There's no
crazy.
There's
You
no two ways
the
about
last
it.
election, there was that big article that had been produced. Was it the New York Times? It was one of those papers. It was about the Hunter Biden laptop, and they got removed from Twitter. It's like, what? This is an article that is that the New York or whoever published it, I can't remember the exact entity, but their editorial services went through it, looked through the sourcing, and decided that this was information that they wanted to put themselves behind. And Twitter was just like, nope, you're gone. Or was it Facebook? It was one of the others. It's just insane. You couldn't share it on Facebook.
Yeah, but here's what the founders didn't anticipate, because some people, I guess it's the same point that some people make about the two political parties, is they never anticipated that the media would willingly capitulate and give up the very protection they gave them to operate in opposition to the
freedom
government.
of the press. Yeah.
Freedom. Yeah. They didn't anticipate that. Just like they didn't anticipate two political parties working in collusion with each other behind the scenes.
That were telling the American people the truth. Like, you can't get away with just everything you want. The media is there. They're protected from you so that they can, they can report. And now they've somehow become like
when you say who watches the Watchmen? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the multimedia arm of, like, I don't know if they're political parties, but they're certainly enormous entities that have enormous control over what they're actually allowed to put out there and what opinions they're allowed to have.
The only question right now is who's pulling whose strings, but come on. It's like Fox is, for all intents and purposes, the multimedia arm of the Republican Party. MSNBC is clearly the multimedia arm of the Democratic Party. And they're both the multimedia arms of the donors who run both parties. This is clearly a pyramid scheme from the top to the bottom. It's the people with the money passing laws through the political parties who are basically just involved in this political kabuki, and now it's clear that the media companies are basically propagandizing everything to help achieve the goals of the donors. From YouTube, owned by Google, to all this stuff, guys. Our personal freedoms. I would even say the very truth and facts themselves have been under assault for years now, and actually, I think the job has been done. I think you have to go to the cemetery, Arlington Cemetery now, put up 2 tombstones, truth and facts, and just say, born whenever, but died 2021. It's over. Nobody. I was talking about this about my wife yesterday, and the thing is that I told her we are at a point now where no one can trust what anybody else is saying. Period. You can't. You cannot. You can, like, she was talking to me about this whole case out in Michigan about how the parents are getting arrested now because they basically with involuntary manslaughter. And she was talking to me. She can see the look on my face. It's just throwing the facts at me. I'm like, Tara, with all due respect, I'm gonna wait for this to shake out a bit. I say anything, a form of opinion. As I said, based on that Rittenhouse thing, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether this is prosecutorial misconduct. I don't know if all the facts are put out there correct. I can't make a judgment based on what the parents didn't do, even if they got arrested rightfully or not, because of what just happened. I can't do that. I got to wait 3 months I got to be skeptical. You have to be an ultimate skeptic now, to the point where it's like, I don't care if you show me the arrest report or the court order thing. How do I know that didn't get doctored or somebody in the chain didn't do this? I just don't know anymore. Nobody knows that. So this is the era now that if your whole life, if you've been working at and honing your conspiracy theory skills, now is your time. It's open,
so
baby.
Weird.
Open.
That George Orwell obviously kind of predicted a lot of this. I don't think that he kind of predicted the media aspect being quite so enormous in this. But it's like you and I need to go reread 1984 again and just do one of these videos on that and all the things that we can make a correlation to that are happening nowadays. But it's so weird, and we're even changing like the language, and everyone's going along with it.
Yeah. No, it's the
meaning, like in the dictionary, is changing yearly on these terms that we've been using our whole lives.
Oh no, and it's I get into arguments with people that like that all the time. It's just like, yo, dude, just again, and now because of what's going on is now Merriam and Webster are going to come. Oxford Dictionary is going to come under question, because the thing is, when you look at a dictionary definition, a lot of times you'll see like 3 definitions and you'll see like numbers next to them, and it's like, yeah, they're not doing them alphabetically. They're doing them based on what these meanings, what their use is, and what's commonly the culture has accepted as using that word as a definition. So the first one is like, this is how the word is most commonly understood to mean. The second one is this and that. So it's like, I haven't looked up woke yet, but I'm sure when I look up woke, it's going to be real interesting with those definitions. But I tell people all the time, if you don't like the way I'm using the word, take it up with Merriam and Webster, okay? It's like, I'm not into this lazy use of like phrases and concepts like critical race theory. I'm not into this lazy use of like the word like woke. I'm not into any lazy use of a word like bigotry or prejudice or racism. That's why a lot of times when I've been on the channel, it's like, I don't attribute everything to racism, because racism has a very specific meaning. And what you're describing could just as well be bigotry, prejudice, or just outright nepotism. It doesn't have, nepotism or cronyism. It doesn't necessarily have to jump, affinity, that one. Affinity, but it doesn't have to say jump to racism, because racism has a very specific lens. So even the language is under assault, and it's like, and you're right. This is stuff where a lot of authors talked about this years ago, where basically it was fiction, if not science fiction, and it has become horrible, terrible, consequentially devastating reality, because you literally right now, this means that it was already happening, but this is the case now. None of us can have a constructive, forward-moving, transformative, in terms of our culture and our lives, conversation going forward at a global level. We just can't. You and I can sit here on a YouTube channel and have a show and talk about this because we know and trust each other. But in terms of having this kind of a dialogue on a national or even a global level now, I think that the capacity to do that has been neutered, if not outright destroyed.
Well, yeah, there's so many weird factions. Like, people just hate each other without knowing each other anymore.
Exactly. And it was like, and there was a time where you could have like this kind of like, and I'm using this word very loose, a global view of a group, and you could make arguments against them, basically a broad stroke argument. But the point of information, that you would think that the point of information, especially I think when you got to the social media, even television, was that you would be able to present people information so they could see what somebody else was like and make an informed decision about what that group was or where they were coming from. That's the whole point of like on the ground reporting, is that people get to see what's actually going on and be able to make a judgment of decisions about themselves, about how they're thinking about a particular group or situation, about the parties involved, or whatever it may be. But what's happened is, instead of it being a tool for us to get to know each other better, it's just become a tool to control and manipulate us exponentially more. And it's a sad state of affairs. It's a sad state of affairs for somebody at Twitter to basically sit there and say, we're going to make it so that you have less information. You can't put up a photo, you can't put up a video, you can't judge for yourself. You and I had a conversation sort of like similar to this at one time, and the reason why I disagree with, I understand the reality of the situation, why I disagree with it is that there's a presumption. While there may be people, and I give people this, who are basically either emotionally and I would say organically, because sometimes some of our bodies don't work right, or certain things didn't happen gene-wise where you can't process it. There are people whom you cannot give information to, and they cannot handle it or manage it the right way. But you cannot take that group of people out, even though they exist and whatever they be, and apply that to the rest of us. The rest of us have the right and the capacity to have a video sit in front of us and to watch it and to judge what's going on. But and they know that. With the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, they know that. They knew that if those videos had been more widely spread, distributed, or referred to than they were, they would have known that people would have been like, oh, this is nonsense. This is garbage. Get that joint out of here. They wouldn't have been able to get a year's news cycle out of it otherwise. And they know it. Because, and that's like, I still implore people to watch the Jimmy Dore video he did about this with Matt Orfea, Orfea, where it starts off with this this tweet from this young lady who says she was living in her progressive bubble. She swore right up until, I think, almost the sentencing time that the victims were black. And that was because of the information she was being fed all this time. And when you watch those videos that Matt Orfea, when he breaks it down, it's just like, even if you can't stand Kyle Rittenhouse and what you think he represents, you know for a fact, nah, son, the only thing you wouldn't have done is gone down to the riot. But the thing is, based on what happened, it is what it is. It is what it is. And you're not getting around it. You're not getting around it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the other things they're trying to tramp down, obviously there's the NASCAR interview where the people in the background were saying some not very nice things about the president, and the reporter's like, oh, they're saying, let's go Brandon. Obviously, I think that's considered hate speech now. Then there was you remember the reporting from the riots, mostly peaceful as everything's blowing up in the background?
Yeah, I've been to plenty of peaceful march, and like even my wife says, the people are down at the peaceful protest. I said, we all know that. For those of us who've done it and who have marched, we know that. There's always that. I'm not gonna say always, but there can be this 2 or 3% who go out there and do the exact opposite of the people, of the families who are the champions of the cause of their loved ones of trying to get justice, who will tell you, don't do this. And then there's always this group of people who basically think there's some justification of property damage, or just want to blow stuff up, that will go and take advantage of situations like this. But even then, we are not in a position to differentiate that. I, for a couple of months, have been putting, maybe a year or two ago, I've been putting on Facebook videos of situations that were happening at protests where actual protesters were telling other protesters, cut that crap out. The and I'll just, because there's two white people with masks on before COVID happened, were basically spray painting the Starbucks, and a female black protester said, they need to cut that crap out, because when you do that, we get blamed for that. One guy, black guy, was at a protest, was standing with a baseball bat in his hand, looking at the shop, ready to bust the window open. 20 other black protesters got in front of him, talked him down from doing it. Protesters one time were trying to attack these cops at a protest. A whole bunch of people got in between them. You can imagine how many times you've seen those videos as opposed to the ones where everybody's blowing up cars and lighting stuff up and running through the streets.
You never see them now,
whatever
Jermaine.
it is. Oh, you never see them now.
Free speech.
It's not good for free speech. But this all comes down to, and I'll go back to this again, Les Moonves at CBS, who had the audacity and nerve to say publicly, and it's on video, they haven't scrubbed it already. He said Trump may not be good for America, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's good for CBS. And that tells you exactly where their heads are at. They don't care. This is not about, for the media, this is not about the truth. This is not about being honest actors. This is not about helping our society be better. It's about them manipulating, controlling, and presenting information in any way they can to make a damn buck. And we unfortunately, now it falls upon us to be more patriots than these people ever will be.
And it definitely feels like big technology out there. Obviously, the big entities that we rely on for communication nowadays, and actually to kind of keep up with different perspectives, are hell bent on trying to chip away at the First Amendment and redefine what free speech is.
Yeah, Zuckerberg, at some point you just have to accept him for what he is. He's basically the Lex Luthor of social media at this point. So to bring it back to comics, he has either lied or misrepresented about things that we don't probably even know about at this point. It's like there was this wonderful skit that I heard one time where these guys did a song kind of like in the vein of some of those old musicals, like a Mel Brooks video, and one of the lines from the song is that at some point 20 years from now it'll come out on NPR, and by then who cares? It's like, because the damage has been done. It's like we always find out about this stuff 20 years after the fact, and that's what was so surprising about the Rittenhouse thing, was that it fell apart so quick. That they had done it for a year, and like right before they almost got the verdict in, it almost was. You would have had this narrative of Rittenhouse that would have just been like went with him for the rest of his life. For some reason, it just all fell apart at once. Unlike the Russiagate thing, where now that nonsense has completely been blown up. Completely been blown up in so many different ways, and you're barely hearing blips about it. It's like it's not even like a correction on page 50. It's like, guy got arrested. Yeah, they were lying about that. Okay, Rittenhouse. It's like, are you serious? We spent years in the joint, and I actually jokingly complimented the Democratic Party because people were around, well, the Democrats, they're a bunch of boobs, they're a bunch of incompetents. They just somehow they always slit their own throats. And what you realize is, nah, bro. They doing when they lose on purpose. They paid to lose on purpose. They played to look like nincompoops on purpose. Because when you look how they ran that Russiagate thing, that was a master class in red bait. And they were disciplined. They never got off message, and they kept that joint going for years, knowing from the get go it was a bunch of junk.
Yeah, they even got they got the big hearing with Congress. They got an impeachment out of it. At least a trial. Yeah,
it's just like, and it's like, and some people will throw up Benghazi. And I ain't got no problem with you throwing up Benghazi and whether they made a big deal out of it or not, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore whose side and who's doing this or what. They're all in on it. They are all in on it when it's convenient for them. So even now, if people from the right want to start pushing against the false narratives from the left, it's like, well, you guys are a bunch of false narratives. And we talked about this before. Nobody is willing to do the right thing, which is to universally disarm and just start doing the right thing from that point forward, because that requires too much courage, too much sacrifice, and there's no material benefit to it. There's some things in life you're going to do that when you do them, you have to realize you're doing this for something that's bigger than you. It doesn't mean that you benefit from it personally, or that you don't, or you're going to sacrifice for it with a whole bunch of people. Sometimes there's some things you have to do in life. You have to work in the interest of other people, and that's the only reward, and that's the only purpose. That's the only thing that should count. But we don't have, and I've said this to people when it comes to, if anything was revealed in 2020 and now 2021 is that we have no leadership whatsoever. These people claiming to be our leaders, these people are not leaders. I don't care. Some people have shown themselves to be leaders because they've been doing these things all along, but the vast majority of people want to sit up there over the rest of us and talk about follow me, trust me, I have the answers. These people are clowns. They're self-serving clowns looking out for themselves, and they will serve any of us up or all of us up at a moment's notice just so they get ahead.
Yeah, the only thing that'll come out of this is it'll be acknowledged that this is happening. There'll be, they'll put out some subpoenas. There'll be a hearing, in the Senate or whatever. Some people will get some FaceTime where they get to talk down to Zuckerberg and this new guy from Twitter. They'll write a strongly worded memo, and then they'll never talk about it again. There will be no action to correct this.
No action. It's like you said, we talking about the 2008 financial crisis and stuff. Hey, look what happened with that. And the vice president of the United States of America right now, when it came to Steve Mnuchin's role in the 2008 financial crisis, just turned a freaking blind eye to it. And that's what she did. That's why when you look at the debates, and everybody was like, oh, the way she slaughtered Joe Biden when she came out him and lumped him up in that thing, that's why the next week Tulsi Gabbard was able to do the same thing to her. Exact same thing to her, to such a devastating effect for those of us who knew about her beforehand, because it was like they wasn't ready for that. To such devastating effect, she didn't even place in the dang race. She didn't even place that she couldn't even win her own state, and now somehow she's the vice president of the United States. It's like, guys, it's like it's like people say to me, "Do you believe that the presidential election wasn't rigged?" Look, I'm not saying that it wasn't rigged. I'm just saying, yo, dude, just get the dang what do they call it, smoking guns already. I know it's out there. You already have the smoking gun where it came to whenever they were suing something during the Hillary Clinton campaign, where the Democratic Party admitted in court that basically, look, we're a private corporation. And pretty much what they're saying is that we're just running these primaries and elections for show. Yeah, exactly. We're just running this for show. At any given time, we can walk into a back room and just basically pick the candidate. And it's legal, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because we're all thinking like somehow when we see the Democratic Party, Republican Party, we're thinking there's some kind of constitutionally backed and created kind of entity. They're private freaking corporations running for public offices. Literally, the corporations run us in everything that we do. And we need to start getting more hip about that, more angry about that, and more active about it.
I couldn't agree more, Gevian. I do want to say thank you very much for coming on here and talking about this. We're definitely going to talk about that 2008 financial crisis with the housing bubble.
Let me know. I'll do my
homework. A lot
homework.
of stuff to get into there. But I do want to say thank you very much, Gevian. Do you have any final words before we wrap this bad boy up?
All I'll say is, as always, guys, it's just like, be kind, don't suck.
Gevian came in hot this week. He has some stuff to say. I appreciate you getting that off your chest.
No problem. That's what I'm here for.